Most people believe that death is a distant event. They assume that people who lose their spark later in life, perhaps in their 70s or 80s, are the ones who succumbed to time. They look at old age as the moment when human vitality naturally comes to an end. But what if the opposite is true? What if the people who look perfectly fine on the outside, the ones who commute every day, sit in neat cubicles, and smile politely at grocery stores, are actually the ones who have already left this world behind? What if thousands of people you pass on the street every single day are already dead, but their bodies simply haven't stopped moving? Because there's something most people never realize about the human timeline. Real mortality isn't dictated by biological clocks. It is dictated by the expiration of our willingness to experience life. And if you relate to the things in this video, your mind may work very differently from the average person. You might still be fighting a battle that most people around you gave up on years ago. It's late afternoon, right around 5:30 p.m. You're sitting in your car at a crowded intersection, or perhaps standing on a train platform during rush hour. Everyone else seems busy, surrounded by noise, messages, conversations, distractions. You see rows of glowing smartphones reflecting off tired eyes. You hear the dull hum of engines, the fragmented snippets of superficial small talk, the endless notification pings of a society terrified of missing out on absolutely nothing. And somehow, instead of wanting more of it, instead of diving into the digital noise to numb your senses like everyone else, you pull away. Not because you hate people, not because you're broken, but because something deep inside your chest feels profoundly exhausted by the sheer emptiness of the noise. You look out the window at the sea of faces, and you see an unsettling blankness. You realize that everyone is moving, but nobody seems to be going anywhere. Then a quiet, heavy thought appears in your mind. Why am I like this? Is this really all there is? Did I sign up for a lifetime of just surviving? And that question matters more than most people think. Because the truth is, noticing this emptiness isn't a symptom of depression, it's a symptom of awareness. Certain behaviors and existential realizations often reveal something much deeper happening psychologically beneath the surface of our mundane existence. And the people who ask these questions consistently, the ones who look at modern compliance and feel an instinctual rejection, usually share one thing in common. They've developed a level of self awareness most people never reach. They are the ones who refuse to let the concrete of adulthood harden around their soul. Here are the signs. Before we dive deeper, let me ask you, when did you stop being excited about life? Can you pinpoint the exact month or the exact year when anticipation turned into mere routine? Number one, you recognize that the greatest tragedy of human existence isn't biological expiration. Instead of fearing the literal end of your life, you find yourself deeply terrified of a psychological expiration. You look at the concept of aging, and you don't fear wrinkles or gray hair. You fear the numbness of spirit. You naturally tend to look past the surface of how people appear and look straight into whether they are actually present in their own lives. Most people respond by focusing entirely on physical security. They worry about insurance, retirement accounts, and physical comfort. They mistake a beating heart for a living soul. They distract themselves with material acquisitions, believing that as long as they are moving forward financially, they are moving forward humanly. They seek validation through titles and symbols of stability, avoiding the profound internal discomfort of admitting they feel empty inside. But your instinct is different. You understand that most people don't die at 75, physically, they die mentally at 25. That's the precise age where they stop taking risks, they stop dreaming, they stop believing life can become something greater. After that point, they cease to evolve, they just exist. Psychologists call this existential stagnation. It's intimately linked to low openness to experience and high psychological conformity. Because when a person consistently prioritizes safety over curiosity, they slowly develop an inner deadness. Their body keeps moving through the motions of existence, but their ambition dies. And honestly, that's rare to notice. Most people never become aware enough to develop this part of themselves. They are perfectly content to let their inner fire burn down to ash as long as the external room remains warm. But over time, realizing this dark truth changes the way a person thinks, feels, and sees the world entirely. But this is where things get interesting. Number two, you notice how the world around you is explicitly engineered to suppress individuality. Instead of viewing social expectations as a helpful roadmap, you see them as an assembly line designed to produce identical, compliant parts. You naturally tend to feel a sense of friction whenever you are told to do something simply because that's how things have always been done. Most people respond by eagerly jumping onto the conveyor belt. They bend over backward to follow the unwritten script written by previous generations. They tell themselves and others to be realistic. They actively search for a safe job, put their heads down, and repeat the same corporate rituals for decades. Their primary directives in life become remarkably small. Don't fail. Don't stand out. Don't make waves. But your instinct is different. You look at this prescribed safety and feel a sense of existential claustrophobia. You see that the world doesn't kill your dreams aggressively with a dramatic, climactic blow. It kills them quietly. It suffocates them with a steady stream of bi weekly paychecks, low interest car loans, and the comfortable station of weekend television. It rewards you for giving up your uniqueness by offering you the collective approval of the mediocre. Psychologists refer to this as systemic conditioning. It is linked to a personality trait known as high trait agreeableness, coupled with an implicit fear of social exclusion. When you fall victim to it, you trade your authentic potential for external predictability. You stop asking what you want from life and start asking what the system wants from you. And honestly, realizing this design is incredibly rare. Most people never notice the invisible walls of the maze because they are too busy competing for the cheese. But once you see the machinery of social predictability, you can never unsee it. It changes your entire relationship with what society calls success. Look at your daily life honestly. Are you living or just repeating? Is tomorrow going to be a completely new day, or is it just going to be a copy paste version of today? And this is the part most people misunderstand. Number three, you feel an active danger in being too comfortable. Instead of celebrating an easy, completely unchallenged lifestyle, you look at total comfort with a deep sense of suspicion. You naturally tend to feel anxious when your life becomes too predictable, knowing that stagnation routinely disguises itself as peace. Most people respond to discomfort by retreating immediately into familiar habits. They crave the safety of the known, even if the known is actively making them miserable. They choose the same unfulfilling job, maintain the same shastaso friendships, engage in the same mind numbing conversations, and rely on the same well worn excuses for why they can't change today. They construct a fortress of routine and mistake the walls for a sanctuary. But your instinct is different. You recognize that comfort feels safe until you realize it stole your entire life. You understand that a cage is still a cage, no matter how soft the cushions inside are. You see that when your environment demands absolutely nothing new from you, your mind begins to atrophy. Psychologists study this under the framework of hedonic adaptation and the comfort zone paradox. It's linked to an over reliance on avoidant coping mechanisms. When a person isolates themselves from all forms of psychological risk, their world shrinks. Their capacity to handle challenges degrades, and their reality becomes a tiny, repetitive loop. And honestly, identifying comfort as a threat is rare. Most people spend their entire lives working toward a state of complete, unbothered stagnation. They want everything to be easy, but over time, avoiding all resistance changes the way a person develops. It leaves them fragile, unprepared, and structurally empty. The difficult part is, people often judge this trait incorrectly. When you refuse to settle into the comfortable numbness that everyone else has accepted, they don't see it as courage. They assume your restlessness, your preference for solitude, or your unwillingness to participate in superficial milestones means something is wrong with you. They apply a negative label, calling you detached, unrealistic, impractical, or difficult. So over time, you may have learned to hide parts of yourself, to seem more normal, more social, more acceptable to a world that prefers its citizens quiet and predictable. You've smiled through the agonizing small talk. You've pretended to care about things that carry absolutely no weight. You've masked your deepest thoughts just to avoid making others uncomfortable with your depth. But constantly ignoring your natural wiring creates a kind of quiet, suffocating exhaustion, because pretending to be someone else, forcing yourself to fit into a mold that was never designed for your soul, always comes with a massive psychological cost. It drains your energy, muddies your vision, and leaves you wondering if you're losing your mind. Think back to who you used to be. What happened to the version of you that had dreams? Where did that version go? And who gave you permission to bury them? Because at the end of the day, this was never really about age or career choices. Number 4, you realize that growth is not an automatic process that accompanies aging. Instead of assuming that maturity naturally comes with time, you understand that most adults simply stop developing altogether at a certain point. You naturally tend to seek out new ideas, difficult books, complex skills, and uncomfortable perspectives because you are terrified of mental stagnation. Most people respond to adulthood by shutting down their cognitive borders. The moment they finish formal education, their curiosity dies. They read no new perspectives, explore no unfamiliar hobbies, engage in no creative expressions, and seek out absolutely no personal challenges. They decide that they know enough about the world, closing their minds into a rigid set of opinions that they defend until their physical death. But your instinct is different. You recognize the profound truth that the moment people stop growing, they start aging. True aging has nothing to do with time. It has to do with the closing of the mind. You see people who are biologically 28 but psychologically 80, completely calcified in their ways, incapable of learning or changing. In psychology, this is known as a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. It is closely tied to cognitive flexibility. When a person ceases to challenge their brain with novel stimuli and complex problems, their neural plasticity drops. They lose the ability to think critically, becoming hyper-dependent on scripts, dogmas, and automatic routines. And honestly, maintaining an active hunger for growth is rare. Most people prefer the easy convenience of an unchanging mind. They want the world to be simple, predictable, and fully categorized. But keeping your mind open changes the way you age. It keeps your spirit young, sharp, and resilient long after your body begins its natural decline. And honestly, this is why many people never fully understand you. Number 5, you observe how fear silently becomes the primary architect of most human lives. Instead of viewing fear as a temporary emotional signal, you see how people allow it to settle into their foundations, dictating every major decision they make. You naturally tend to look at your own fears not as walls to avoid, but as indicators of where you need to go next. Most people respond to fear by surrendering to it completely, though they dress it up in the language of prudence. They are paralyzed by the fear of judgment, terrified of what their neighbors, coworkers, or family will whisper if they try something unconventional. They are crippled by the fear of failure, choosing a guaranteed life of miserable mediocrity over a slight chance of spectacular disappointment. They harbor a deep, unspoken fear of starting over, anchoring themselves to sinking ships because they've already spent so much time on board. But your instinct is different. You understand that people don't choose boring lives, they choose safe lives too many times. You see that every single time someone says, I can't, they usually mean, I am afraid. You realize that a life structured entirely around risk mitigation is not a life at all. It is merely a long, drawn out strategy for avoiding embarrassment. Psychologists identify this as experiential avoidance. It is a state where a person's identity becomes completely synonymous with their defense mechanisms. They no longer move toward things they love. They only move away from things they fear. Their boundaries shrink until their entire existence can fit inside a matchbox. And honestly, breaking free from this fear-based identity is rare. Most people will happily trade their freedom for the illusion of safety. But when you refuse to let fear run your life, your perspective shifts. You realize that the worst case scenario isn't failure, it's regret. Ask yourself this before it's too late. Did you choose this life? Or did you slowly settle into it because you were afraid of the alternative? But the deeper reason behind this goes much further than most people realize. Number 6, you notice how the perception of time accelerates dramatically when life becomes stagnant. Instead of watching the days pass with a sense of presence, you feel the terrifying speed at which unremembered weeks and months slip through your fingers. You naturally tend to feel an urgent need to make your days distinct, knowing that routine is the ultimate thief of time. This part hits emotionally hard. Most people respond to the passage of time by ignoring it until it's too late. They fall into a hypnotic rhythm where weeks seamlessly become months and months effortlessly become years. Because every day looks exactly like the last, their brain stops recording memories. There are no landmarks, no emotional peaks, no distinct shifts in the narrative. Suddenly, they wake up, look in the mirror, and they're older. Decades have passed in what feels like a single blurry afternoon. But your instinct is different. You refuse to let your life slide by in a haze of automated behaviors. You hear the clock ticking with an agonizing clarity. You know the key line all too well. One day, they look in the mirror and realize they became someone they never wanted to be. They became the very adult their childhood self would have looked at with a sense of profound pity. Psychologically, this phenomenon is tied to proportional time perception and cognitive chunking. When your life contains no novel experiences, your brain compresses time. It deletes the repetitive data to save energy, making a year feel like a week. To live a life of pure routine is to actively shorten your subjective lifespan. And honestly, waking up to the speed of time before your youth is gone is incredibly rare. Most people require a midlife crisis or a terminal diagnosis to realize their time is running out. But maintaining this acute temporal awareness changes how you spend your hours. It forces you to treat your attention as the priceless currency it actually is. Most people spend their entire lives trying to escape themselves. They cannot handle a single hour of unfilled time. They stay constantly distracted, furiously busy, and aggressively stimulated. They fill their ears with podcasts, their eyes with endless video feeds, and their minds with superficial drama. Because silence forces a person to confront who they really are. Silence strips away the titles, the distractions, and the false busywork, leaving you face to face with your own raw reality. And for many people, that mirror is deeply, terrifyingly uncomfortable. They don't want to see that they've abandoned their passions or that they're trapped in a life they don't love. But when you learn to sit alone with your thoughts without the desperate need for external input, something changes internally. You stop needing constant validation from a society that is itself asleep. You begin trusting your own mind. You develop a deep, unshakable friendship with your own consciousness. And you find a quiet clarity that cannot be bought or sold. And maybe the biggest sign of all is that you constantly reflect on yourself. After conversations, wondering if you spoke with absolute authenticity or merely performed a role. After mistakes, looking at your failures not as a source of shame, but as data for refinement. Late at night, when the world finally grows quiet and the lights go out, you ask yourself questions most people spend their entire lives actively avoiding. Why did I react like that? What was I actually feeling beneath that anger? What needs to change within me tomorrow? Nobody forces you to think this deeply. No boss, no teacher, no societal institution demands that you perform this painful, beautiful internal archaeology. You just naturally do it. You do it because you refuse to live an unexamined life. And that level of self-awareness quietly transforms a person over time. It separates you from the sleepwalking masses and places the steering wheel of your destiny firmly back into your own hands. None of these traits are loud. They don't come with flashing lights, social media followers, or public applause. Most people around you will never notice them. They won't applaud your self-awareness. Then they will never see the agonizing internal battles you've fought quietly in the dark corners of your own mind just to keep your spark alive. But the ability to understand yourself deeply, to look at your life honestly, and to refuse the comfortable death of conformity is one of the rarest forms of intelligence a human being can ever develop. Because in a world addicted to noise, superficial attention, and constant digital distraction, being able to sit alone with your own mind without running from yourself is a kind of strength very few people ever reach. And if you've developed that ability, if you are still fighting to dream, to take risks, and to grow, you're already different from most people. You still have time, but not unlimited time. The goal of existence isn't to quietly survive until retirement, collecting comfort items along the way. The goal is to actually live before you die. Most people stop living at 25. You don't have to. If this video resonated with you, there's a reason for that. This channel is a quiet space for people who think deeply, feel deeply, and see the world differently. We don't chase trends, and we don't look for loud distractions. We look for truth. Subscribe if that sounds like you. Leave a comment below with the word present if you are still alive inside. Let the others know you're here. Thank you for listening.